Hi, everybody. It's David Wildson at the New Jersey Globe. Welcome to our annual filing day live stream. I'm with Joey Fox and Zach Blackburn of the New Jersey Globe and Micah Rasmussen, the director of the Rebovich Institute of New Jersey Politics at Rider University. We are now 5 hours past the filing deadline, and we're still waiting for a bunch of information about, the final list. There was an upload a little while ago. I'm getting some information directly from the campaigns that I'll tell you about. But I guess, the reality here is this is the first federal election with the new signature requirements. And we're at a U.S. Senate candidates used to need 1,000. Now they need 2,500. So it's up, for Senate and House, signature requirements are up 150%. And what that means is that the people at the Division of Elections, instead of having to count to 1,000 for each of the Senate candidates, and I believe between the two parties that's 6, they now have to count beyond 2,500. And for congressional candidates, instead of it being 200, they're counting for what is going to be beyond 500. So we're getting this information, and we've got a bunch of counties too. I mean, I'll say the obvious: if you're not on the ballot, if you didn't file your petitions, chances of you winning, say we're all in agreement, fairly slim. This is the moment. And
the only person that I know of who can say that they have won despite not initially appearing on the ballot is Beth Sawyer, who ran a write-in campaign for the primary in 2021 and ended up flipping that seat in the general election. Yeah. So theoretically, everybody, you still have hope.
Yeah, but again, not really. So what we could talk about first is the U.S. Senate. And I was told that there was an update for that, and I'm not seeing it, but I know that, well, there is. So Cory Booker filed this afternoon. There were long lines. Some of these people were there. And again, just for those who don't know, that's just for those who haven't experienced a filing day in Trenton. The Division of Elections does appointments to file petitions through the Friday before, but not on filing day. So this is a painless process for everybody unless you wait till the last minute, which appears to be most of them. So there are people who got there and were waiting. I'm told not 4 hours to be taken, but 4 hours to be taken and then to be processed. I'm told by somebody who was in the waiting room that only Cory Booker's campaign person arrived with a box. Everybody else had envelopes. Booker had a box. I think he's filing with about 7,500 signatures. But right behind Cory Booker's representative in line was, I want to get this right, former Reddington Democratic Municipal Vice Chairman Chris Fields, who is also running for the U.S. Senate in the Democratic primary. He was after Booker, and I'm going to look and see. I have not found out if his numbers have been recorded. I'm told that Booker's will not be tonight. I don't see Fields on here, but he did go. And you'd almost presume that if you know you're driving to Trenton and you don't have 2,500 signatures, you sort of wonder, like, why bother? So you almost presumed that if you're there, you've got enough signatures to file, but I don't know yet. On the Republican side, and I thought, the chances were greater than zero that some of the Republicans might not be able to get to 2,500. It seems like all but one did. So the petitions are there for Richard Tabor and Alex Zidane and Justin Michael Murphy and Dr. Robert Lubavitz, who filed with over the 2,500. So the one that we're crossing off the list again is Natalie Rivera, who has made several runs for the United States Senate, but never moved her campaign past actually filing the petition to get on the ballot to let voters consider her candidacy. She didn't do very well at these county conventions. We're going to talk later about whether the county conventions matter. So we're looking at about a four-way Republican primary for the Senate with lines divided, not lines. God, I gotta get rid of that muscle memory. With endorsements and slogans divided by three candidates, not equally, but divided by three. I mean, Mike, I'll start with you. What is, this Republican primary for U.S. Senate, where you had a bunch of conventions? Some went to Tabor, some went to Zidane, three went to Justin Murphy, and this is three candidates really with no money at this point.
Right.
What is this? It sort of reminds me a little bit of Maida Singh, Flanagan 2020, or even Jeff Bell and Rich Goldberg and Marie Saverin in 2014. I mean, what does this look like without, we're now in this era without lines? What does it mean?
Well, there's a couple things. One is that when this new signature requirement law was passed, one of the rationale that we all talked about was that if this is an organizing exercise, this is your first big organizing assignment, and it is a chance to get yourself up to speed and see if your campaign is up to the task. And so clearly a number of Republican candidates met that standard. However, is it an exercise in futility, right? Is it, the expression you've been using recently, David, is here's nothing, guard it with your life, right? What is it that they are fighting for? They're fighting for the chance to take on a formidable candidate, a formidable incumbent with a nationwide profile in a very Democratic year, and the chance to swing at a record that is now 54 years old, that's unbroken, a streak that's unbroken. And so you really do have to ask yourself, not out of a sense of we shouldn't be asking this out of a sense of ridicule by any means, because we have often talked, the four of us have often talked on this show, how on these live streams, how important it is that we have candidates to run, that we have opponents that we don't have an election unless we have a choice. And so they are all to be commended for taking this shot. But what they're going to be able to do with it, they've met this first bar, but what they're going to be able to do with it from here is really an open question.
David, you're muted.
Yeah, I saw that. I was just testing out, making sure the other signals are going. And if you see what looks like, you can't see Joey Fox's hands, but he is
I'm feverishly typing. I'm trying to input. I mean, if we don't get full updates tonight, then maybe my feverish typing is actually for naught. But I am trying to input all of the information that we currently have. I mean, part of the problem is, and this is just, until we get a final update, which may not happen for a while, we can talk about everyone who's filed. Part of the interesting story of filing day is who has not filed. And we've been hearing some things about various candidates of varying levels of prominence who have not filed, but it'll be tough to know that for certain unless A, they tell us, or B, we actually get a final update. So that's just a caveat that is different from our usual filing day live streams. Because I'm not sure if we've ever done a live stream before where we didn't actually have the final list of candidates already in hand, either right at the beginning or a short ways in. So just be warned, everyone.
So I'm getting
signature requirements are up 150%, but staffing today was not up 150%.
No, and by the way, there's nobody out there who would tell the Division of Elections you should increase your staffing by 150% in order to handle filing day, because some people are waiting around because we're getting impatient at 9 o'clock. I'm told that Chris Fields and this could go to court. None of a lot of these do. Chris Fields fell 80 signatures short of qualifying. So by 80 signatures, Cory Booker could avoid a primary this year. I don't know what these exact numbers are. And one other thing I should just say and get it out of the this. I love the judiciary when it comes to petition challenges for statewide or congressional or legislative office, because they don't go to the Superior Court. They go to administrative law judges who've got their acts together on this. And if these petitions are challenged on Friday, they'll be in court Monday morning. And they will assign a whole bunch of judges to review signature by signature. It is mind-numbing, it is exhausting, but it's thorough, and you typically get a really fair result out of this. And you don't have to be an attorney to file. Any voter can go in there. I'm going to create a huge problem by talking this much for the Division of Administrative Law, but any voter can go in and file an objection, and it's all virtual. You don't have to go to court. There's no filing fee. And so if you're running for county commissioner or mayor or township committee somewhere, and you want to file a challenge to a petition beyond the municipal clerk, you've got to go, to the Superior Court, pay a filing fee, get before a judge. Sometimes they'll want a brief done, and the next thing you know, it's a big deal. But this works really smoothly. So
the classic example, David, the one that we always have to talk about, right? The one that talked about in class today, my students had a ball with it, was Kanye West petitions, right? Watching those with the same blue heart that was drawn over the same eye throughout multiple petitions, and watching that process was just the classic.
And it is it's Jersey, but it's not uncommon for there to be forged signatures. Judges want to let people run. They want to be as liberally construing the election statute as they can, and that extends to, they don't want to disenfranchise a voter who may have signed that petition and isn't there to say yes, I signed, or no, I signed. But we've all seen a whole bunch of these stories. I mean, we have seen in recent years death certificates accompanying signatures. And remember in a Trenton municipal race where they tried to throw a person off the ballot, and they said, okay, here's the signature of this person. Here's the person who signed. Here's their death certificate. And they died before, months ago. They probably didn't sign. And, we could talk about these anecdotal things all the time, but for a long time. But the reality here is this what we're seeing for the Division of Elections. It's just the start of a process, and we're going to be talking about who's in danger. So I ask Zach, you've covered some of these hearings now. I'm going to go through the candidates and what they filed, and tell me if do you think that this is like danger zone? So you need 2,500 run for the U.S. Senate. Richard Tabor's got 3,352.
It's pretty uncommon to see 800 plus knocked off. I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
Unless, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I don't have much to add. It depends on the candidate too, and if they're running a serious campaign, they shouldn't have many issues. And there are enough Republicans in the state to get 3,300 signatures. Where we've seen issues is in places like LD32, where there are how many registered Republicans, like 150, and then you need 150 of all 150 to sign your nominating petition to make the ballot, and then they get knocked off because they're either unaffiliated But Richard Tabor 300 or 3,352 should be safe unless someone really messed something up.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I don't
my
want
rule. Oh, go ahead.
I don't want to embarrass anybody. I remember a couple of years ago, this poor candidate. They were newly drawn congressional districts, and his hometown was split, and he got way over what he needed. But the poor guy went to the wrong side of town, and that was it for his campaign. So if Tabor has, I think what's going to happen, and I shouldn't say I think, this is what's going to happen, is the other candidates are going to start reviewing the petitions, and they're going to run them through the voter database. And if they see a pattern of a lot of registered Democrats, then they will keep going. But if they go through the first, X number of sets of petitions and they all look pretty good, they may not sit and review each one. I will tell you, a good campaign manager, a really thorough campaign manager, they're going to put some volunteers on this and they're going to check every signature. But I agree with you, Zach. And then, so you get to Justin Murphy, he's at 3,010. So he's got a 510 signature cushion.
My instinct here is that the threshold for both House and Senate is around, like, if you have 1/5 more on top of the requirement, then that's probably like you're only in danger if your petitions had substantial issues. I mean, even someone who does really, really good petitions will probably have something like 5 to 10% of them be invalid for one reason or another, just because someone signed their name weird, or they said that they were a registered Democrat, but they're actually not, or whatever. So, if you're a House candidate and you need 500 for that, and you filed with 850, you can easily take that kind of beating. You can remove 100 and you're fine. But if I'm sort of looking for the House candidates at people who are below 600, and thinking, it doesn't even take a systemic issue for that to potentially be in danger. Like, that could be a lot of innocent mistakes that just compound and then oops. So, I mean, yeah, I'm expecting all of us to be stuck on these Zoom hearings for a little while, especially because now the signature requirements are increased. There's going to be more signatures to go through. So really digging that. Also, while we won't be able to track yet who hasn't filed, or like definitively who hasn't filed, there are a few people who have filed who at least I had not previously reported on. I'll have to do some research to see whether any other outlets reported on them and I missed it, or whether they truly were just ghost candidates who arrived at the last minute. But the funniest of those is Donald Crescitello, who has run for a gazillion. He's a former Morristown mayor who's run for a gazillion offices starting in, David, what year?
I mean, I was a kid when he was running for office in the 70s. So
I think his first campaign was in the 60s.
Yeah.
And he tried to file to run. So he's running for the 11th congressional district. He tried to file to run in the special election primary, sued over the higher number of petition signatures and the filing timeline. Turns out he only filed with like 200 signatures anyways, when he needed 500. But apparently behind the scenes since then, he's been working his operation, and he filed with resounding 645 signatures. So unless those petitions have a bunch of messes on them, which, who knows? We don't have access to the petitions right now, so we can't really tell. But it does look like Donald Crescitello is probably going to make the ballot once again.
Unreal. I remember watching his hearing. He had this unfortunate statement to the assignment judge in Morris County, where the judge challenged him on something, and Crescitello said, "Well, my nephew, the assignment judge in Somerset County," and Crescitello just went, "Whoa, totally inappropriate. Don't do that." But this may be, I think I'm going to be fair to say this. This may be the only time, unless Andy McGuire makes a sudden return, that Frank Lautenberg and Anna Lilia Mejia face the same opponent in a Democratic primary. That just sort of shows you the range of this. So I want to go back. Zach. I mean, I might as well finish these. Alex Zidane, 29-21. So he is 421 over.
cutting it closer. They're going to need to be pretty tight, pretty clean. But like Joey mentioned, at that point it takes probably a little bit more than just bad luck to and it's harder for Republicans generally because so many people in the state are registered Democrat or independent or unaffiliated, and while they're gaining more by the day, we'll just have to see. It's too early to tell.
Yeah, and then there's the one who didn't do the petitions, who may have the most money, who's got it's got Larry Weitzner and Carlos Cruz from Jamestown, which brings you a lot of credibility, as you start looking for votes, is Dr. Robert Lebovix from Bergen County. He skipped the convention process. He filed with 3275. So that again is in that same area where people are going to, people will start going through the petitions and seeing what they can challenge. But, if you think that Zidane and Murphy are okay, then Lebovix is probably okay. He will be the only person to ever run against Loretta Weinberg and Cory Booker if he wins the nomination. So certainly the first one to run against Loretta Weinberg and Alex Zidane. So we'll see where that goes. But Joey, why don't we, Micah, is there anything I'm missing on this Republican Senate primary with the file?
No, you're not. I think if Booker had drawn a primary opponent, his campaign has the infrastructure and the people and the wherewithal to probably start going through and spending a lot of time. I don't know if any of these four Republicans, certainly it can be a volunteer effort. You just said anybody can do it. But if you're thinking about a campaign with the infrastructure to just go through everybody else's petition, these are probably not the campaigns that can do that, right? It's not going to stop them necessarily, but it would take more for them to get that done.
I think
the only twist from there, I think I would add, would be, you can do it for the opposing party too. So if Cory Booker or other Democrats have a Republican who they see as, particularly threatening among the crowd, they have the option of going through and challenging those signatures and trying to get them kicked off the ballot as well.
That's true.
Or if one of the county party organizations that's supporting one of them decides, we may not care overly much about this race, but we kind of want our guy to win just so that we can have some muscle in this. So let's see if we can kick someone else off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sometimes there's people who just, enjoy this process and,
I wonder who that could be.
New Jersey's psychopath community is really big on petition challenges.
Just take this out for a spin and just sort of see what it can do. I mean, I think if we're not there already, we are at best a year away from taking the scan of the petitions and using AI to compare it to the voter database and take that human have to look them up one by one element out of it. And I'm confident that technology exists right now. The question is do any of these people in these races know how to use it, or the ones who do know how to use it, do they care enough to use it? But
there will still, I have to imagine, maybe in the New Jersey of 20 years from now, this will be different, but I have to imagine that at least for now, the ultimate decision will still rest with the very human eyes and technological capabilities of administrative law judges and Division of Elections workers. Because if you watch these hearings now, they are substantially more analog than even the technology that the four of us on this live stream are capable of. So if the campaigns start developing AI stuff, then that might mean that the ALJs have to reach about 2014 in terms of tech capability.
Yeah, it is fat, and I'm dwelling a lot on this, but it's interesting. For those of us that have watched these, you have the Division of Elections pulls up the signature, and the judge is looking at the signature on the petition and looking at the signature in the voter rolls, and you have both sides. The side that wants to strike the signature says, Your Honor, this doesn't look at all like the signature on the petition. And the other side is going, look at this, look at the J, the loop. If you see the loop, it's very similar. And they're basically at that point trying to sell the judge So you have three people, none of whom are handwriting experts. And they're debating it, and the judge does, they don't want to knock somebody off that should be there. And it's it's an interesting process, but, Joey and Zach, you won't know about this, but Micah will remember the days where you would walk into a bank to cash a check, pre-ATM.
What is this check to?
Yeah, and they would take take this check, and they would go to a file drawer of index cards, and they would check your signature against the check, and then come back and cash it. Well, banks don't use that technology anymore. They now use a software that pulls different signatures from different places in these databases that they've paid for. I watched a demo a couple of years ago of how they can use this in elections, but they can verify 30,000 signatures a second, and do it with like 99% accuracy or north of 99. But you have these poor judges and campaign people, and they're looking at loops and dots over the I and whatever. But it's an interesting process. And for those of you, and look, I know the audience. If you're watching a live stream about filing day, then if you've never watched a virtual court hearing on the challenge of a nominating petition, I strongly urge you to do it. It's you don't only have to do it once, but it's not as it's an interesting exercise in democracy when you see how that plays out. Joey, give me some of the highlights of, now that you're seeing congressional filings, what the news is. By the way, before I leave U.S. Senate, I've got to point this out. Not on the list of candidates, shockingly, is Lisa McCormick. Right? Who would have seen that coming? Right? That Lisa McCormick doesn't actually appear on the ballot. Unless they can, she and the gremlin Jim Devine are able to forge these signatures like they did in 2021. But she announced for the Senate and went to a couple, at least one convention, I think maybe only one. But they've got a website up. They've been raising money. Lisa McCormick for U.S. Senate. She's been running for office for over 10 years now, has never filed an FEC report, never filed an ELEC report. If newly minted U.S. Attorney Frazier is watching this live stream tonight, first of all, that'd be great. Congratulations. Welcome to all this. But if you are, that might be something, Lisa McCormick, that you might want to look into. With that, let me go to Joey and have you give some of the news of what we're seeing today.
Yeah, I mean, so the sort of dirty little secret about filing day is that in 99 cases out of 100, the news that is made regards the candidates who are least likely to win anyways. Because if you, at the last minute, don't have enough petitions to file, or your campaign falls apart or whatever, and you don't make the ballot, then that's a sign that your campaign was probably already a substantial underdog anyways. And if you're the type of candidate who nobody has ever heard of until you suddenly show up with petitions on election day, then that's just as much a sign that your campaign is probably not going to win, and not really something that is going to be taken super seriously. So, I mean, I reported on one new candidate earlier this morning, Justin Strickland, who is the 6th place finisher in the special election primary against the ultimate victor is Ana Lilia Mejia. He will run again. We've been kind of wondering whether any of Mejia's opponents from the special primary would take her on again in June. And it seems like, most of the big names passed, but we've got Strickland in. And then, as I mentioned before, Donald Crescitello, maybe he had announced publicly before that he was running, maybe not, I don't know, but now we know it. There are a couple of other candidates, just looking at the list, who, so in Josh Gottheimer's 5th congressional district, John Aslanian filed under the slogan, independent-minded Republican. County parties there have already all endorsed a different guy, Sean Carrain. I had never heard of this guy, Aslanian, before, but he does have a website. And then against LaMonica McIver in the 10th district, there is a Democratic primary challenger named Lawrence Poster, whom I have not gone that deep yet. But when I searched quotation marks Lawrence Poster for Congress, I turned up 0 results. So we'll see whether. Anyways, my point being, you don't really need to know about these people or what their deal is. My point being that the people who I haven't already written stories about and you don't already know about, if you're following this stuff closely, are not people you need to probably pay that much attention to regardless. We sort of still need to see, because there's a few important.
And Joey, a number of those that you're talking about who are right on the cusp are in the 500, so they may very well get.
Yeah, John Aslaney is at 549. If either Gottheimer or Corain decides they want to challenge those petitions, there's I would say 50% chance, even 50-50 chance that he gets kicked off. That's oftentimes also the people who file on election day, emergency last minute, are also the people who are most liable to get kicked right back off the ballot. So there's a few names that are of varying levels of importance that are missing from the list. I mean, I'm looking, for example, at the 4th district primary, which a few days ago had 5 Democrats running for it. 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans. This is Chris Smith's seat. 1 Republican and 1 Democrat have publicly announced that they have ended their campaigns. The Republican says he's running in 2028. So best of luck to Rob Canfield in 2 whole years. And one of the Democrats texted me over the weekend to say that he was ending his campaign too. 2 other Democrats, I don't know what their story is. We'll find out, I guess, soon enough. I guess I'm beating around the bush to get to the actually most important contest here, which is the 7th district, where there were 6 Democrats running. 4 have filed. We've got Rebecca Bennett, Brian Varela, Michael Roth, Tina Shaw, who have filed. Beth Adebato has said that she is ending her campaign for the sort of unusual and slightly alarming reason of her campaign PO box received threats in the mail. And she decided that it was not necessarily safe for herself and her volunteers to keep her campaign going, even though she wasn't necessarily sure that the threats had anything to do with the campaign. So she has withdrawn. And Megan O'Rourke has not filed. I think all of us have heard from a place or two that she might have dropped out, but she has not said anything publicly. We have not heard anything back, so we don't really know. That's still in limbo. Again, this is why not having the final list is making this a little more challenging, because we don't actually know some of these things for certain.
So I have confirmed.
As I was saying this, I got yet another text from a different source saying that O'Rourke is dropping out. So
Joey, I have confirmed that she did not appear with petitions today. At the Board of Elections, so that takes her out of the race.
Okay, then I may switch over to mute, let you guys talk amongst yourself for a little while I put up a story on our website about that.
Well, I'll ask a couple things that are interesting here is again who didn't file. So we deal with this every year, that between in the months leading up to the filing deadline, you get these candidates, they appear out of nowhere. They don't look like they've raised anything. They don't look like they have much support. They're not competing at the intramural level, which is what we used to call county conventions. But they put out statements once in a while. They consider they're candidates for Congress, but they just don't show up on filing day at all. So there was Herb Conaway had a primary opponent. He no longer does. Everybody in Donald Norcross had a primary opponent, and he no longer does. And the Republican is at 576. So let's expect Askew and Mickey Quinn and the law firm of Brown and Connery to be engaged in seeing if they can. I think that's exactly a place where you guys were talking about if they can knock a Republican off the ballot and avoid the inconvenience of any general election at all. I think they do. Does that make sense in that case?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's worth noting that Norcross and Nellie Poe were the only 2 House candidates in the entire state to file with over 3,000. Nellie Poe had 3,919.
Yeah.
And Norcross, recognizing that this can all change, but at this moment, Norcross has 3,394. So that these are more signatures than we're seeing even for the statewide Senate candidates. So this is an organizing exercise. This is an early sign of life. Not that you need to see that from two incumbents, but they filed. It's a show of strength, really, is what it is.
I got an education a few years back from a guy who's I'd say fairly decent at field operations. His name is Brian P. Stack, and I sort of was mocking this idea of what do you go out and get 10,000 signatures for when you need 100, and I thought it was like sort of a waste of time. But here's what some people like Stack believe, and that is you can't allow your organization to become dormant. You can't allow them to atrophy, that they don't have a lot to be doing in January and February and March. And so you give everybody in your organization, here's your petition. In the Stack's case, he also gives them the pen, wants to make it, no excuses. I'm sure the pen has Brian Stack's phone number on it, but he gives them these petitions, and he numbers the petitions, and he gives everybody a quota. And when they return the petitions, you're able to see who met their quota and who didn't. And what that means, and I buy this, and I was skeptical, but I have become a believer in this idea that if somebody isn't meeting their quota in February or March, that maybe you have to be careful that when it really counts, getting out the vote on election day, that person might need a little bit help, a little bit watching over. And it sort of makes sense to me. And, when you see it with, somebody like Donald Norcross, that makes sense. I think the Anna Lillian Mejia numbers will grow, by the way. I was told that one of her people was supplementing her signatures today, and they were also there with a box. And that doesn't surprise me at all.
The Stack story rings absolutely true when you think just back to governor last year when he was rallying with Mikey Sherrill and days before the election. He said, "I know you hit your quotas for voting by mail. I know you hit your quotas for early voting." He said that all goes back. We're resetting everything to zero. Now you're starting over again for election day. It doesn't matter that we hit our numbers. We have to hit them all over again for election day.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly it. And that's, by the way, that's where you get really, the people who believe that don't have many losses under their belt either. And there's probably a reason for it. I'm looking at, at the 4th district. I mean, Chris Smith did well with 2,214 signatures. He did. I'm noticing, so Rachel Peace sort of became she's the Monmouth Ocean candidate. She didn't file with their slogans. Instead, she's using Bill McKay from The Candidate, the Robert Red, sort of a tribute to Robert Redford, A Better Way. And then there's a guy with 544. That's exactly the kind of person that can be knocked off. And then, Joey, you were talking about Aslanian, who I did not know was running, but Sean Corrain's campaign manager is Casey Dearden, who is, dogged and, a veteran of a lot of campaigns. And he's going to check the Aslanian signatures himself, I'm sure. So, and then, then you get, you get down to, Joey, I didn't know, maybe you're going to embarrass me. You're going to tell me that you wrote a story on this and I didn't see it. Katie Bansal in the 6th.
Yeah. So the reason why you don't remember it is that I wrote it in December of 2024. She was quite possibly the first, before any incumbent even, the first New Jersey congressional candidate to launch their campaign for 2026.
Well, she filed, but we haven't, slogan.
Rob Canfield beat her record this year.
Yeah.
Right. That is true. Rob Canfield does hold the new record for earliest campaign launch.
Yeah. So, in the 7th now, what what you've got is Rebecca Bennett has now won. She's got Hunterdon. She won Morris. She won Somerset, Union. When I say won, whatever the competition was there, she gets to use their slogan. Micah, I've been, Joe, this is the one I've been waiting all day to talk to you about. And that is, the difference in slogans. So
Right.
where she has the slogan, Hunterdon County Regular Democratic Organization, or the Somerset County Democratic Organization, but in the other counties, just as sort of placeholders, her slogan is Navy Pilot, Mom, Democracy Defender. And I'm sort of wondering, is that a better slogan?
I think that's what we've seen in. We saw that in the 11th primary, where the county organization slogans didn't count for a whole lot, or where they were divided up. I think we have a lot more history of the effectiveness and the efficacy of the slogan that she's using. The particular biographical slogan that she is using has a pretty good history, a pretty good track record in New Jersey, and I would say the organization slogans are taking a beating right now. So yeah.
I mean, so she'll probably switch the Morris slogan, which was awarded to her today, to that. So this Navy Pilot, Mom, Democracy Defender, which I sort of like, because what you just referenced, Mikey Sherrill's bio clearly resonated with Democratic primary voters in a big way last year. I'm wondering if she's giving up maybe a better slogan for that sort of muscle memory of the old organization slogans.
Yeah, it's interesting that Mejia is using the party slogans as well, given that she ran against the organizations really in the primary, and is moving toward the party. Of course, she won them. She won the right to use them, but she's moving toward them for the general election. Maybe there's a feeling among her campaign and of Bennett's campaign that it does have some value in differentiating in a general election.
Yeah. Then I look at Michael Roth, and again, I'm spending time on this because I think slogans are important. Especially when you don't.
They're the only clues we have left, David. Right? We don't have the line anymore, right? So
yes. Yeah. I mean, so you look at what people have chosen. So Michael Roth is interesting. His slogan is he did a different slogan for every county. They're half the same, half different. So like Hunterdon is Hunterdon Democrat, results, reform, lower cost, and he did that with each county: Morris Democrat, Somerset Democrat, but he kept results, reform, lower cost. So I'm sort of looking at these. I don't have any data to back this up. I'm just sort of winging this, but results, reform, lower cost versus Navy Pilot, Mom, Democracy Defender. All of a sudden, you're starting to see a little bit of a contrast there.
Yes, you are. Yeah. And Sam Wang, of course, I don't want to take you away from your point, but he's the only candidate here in the entire state who has chosen some Latin, it looks like. Immigration, science, health, estamos contigo siempre, only in Union County.
Latin?
Yeah.
Mike,
That's Spanish.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So sorry. Now I'm going to shut up for the rest of the night. Sorry about that.
And it's not hard to get me going on Sam Wang, but we'll
I was trying.
You're just the academic. Everything's Latin. I get it. So we'll give you the pass.
Well, he's the only. Okay, so now I'll modify. Right, you guys have set me on the right path. He's the only one who's not using English in the entire state for a slogan so far that we see.
So we get to Tina Shah, and I'm doing this for a reason of sort of not they're not going to spend millions and millions of dollars, and some they certainly aren't going to spend what the the gubernatorial candidates spent last year in becoming known to the voters.
Mhm.
But so this is an opportunity to connect with with introducing yourself to a voter who may only be looking at a ballot. So Tina Shah is ICU doctor protecting care and rights. I don't think that's bad either. I think that's actually, fairly creative. And Brian Varela, except for Sussex, where he has the organization endorsement, he went with No Kings, which is sort of a brand,
Right.
So I think what do you guys think in terms of District 7 Democratic slogan choices? I mean, Bennett, I guess, is going to wind up in most places. She's going to wind up losing that slogan that I sort of like and going with the organization slogans. And then that's up against Roth, results reform, lower costs, and Shah, ICU doctor protecting care and rights, and Varela, No Kings. What is this? Am I reading it too much into this? Am I overthinking this, or does this matter a little bit?
I think it's hard to know whether it matters, and I wish we did know. But I'm trying to put myself in the feet of an undecided Democratic primary voter, what things they might be looking for. And I feel like especially right now in this environment, fewer of them are looking to go to a voting booth and see, Union County regular Democrat. Like, what does that mean? What do you mean, especially when contrasted with, ICU doctor protecting care and rights and just like more tangible things. And so it's especially when they're not lined up with candidates that other people recognize and such. I think it could have the risk of just failing to distinguish themselves and their goals. But then there's like the opposite side of it, like we saw with Ana Lilia Mejia taking the party slogan. So sometimes in her case, she might be looking to try to moderate and try to present herself as like, I can get along with Democrats as a whole, because, there's been a lot of Democrats who've been touch and go on her, considering she's among the more leftist of candidates that we've seen in the state. So it depends case by case, but I think there could be vulnerabilities.
I think the more we talk about this, the more I'm persuaded that the helicopter pilot could have been the ungeneric option for her, right? I mean, if the party slogans could potentially help her, but they're certainly generic, right? They're certainly not novel. They're something we're all used to. We may gloss over them, we may not. But in terms of distinguishing herself from the pack, the way to have done that would have been with the bio tags. The biographical tags.
You sort of, the one thing that comes with, not the one thing, but something that comes with the organization slogan on the ballot is you get to share the organization slogan with Cory Booker, which, in a place like Hunterdon, or Morris means a lot more than sharing it with down ballot county commissioner candidates, whether it's Jason Blazakis, which we'll talk about later, or Chris Russo and Morris. But I do think that's a boost to a candidate in Democratic primary if somebody doesn't know who they are and they're sharing a slogan with Cory Booker. I got to think that helps you.
Yeah, if somebody's taking the time to look and say, "Oh, that's what he used and that's what she used," right? But that's a lot as well, right? We don't know what breadcrumbs voters are using at this point, right? We're still feeling that out. We're still learning the best practices because this is still a new system for us.
Yeah.
I had just put out a story about Megan O'Rourke and Beth Adebayo dropping out. I have been also tracking your guys' conversation, and I detect that we are still talking about ballot slogans. So that's very exciting.
we were just waiting for you. Joey, Zach, you have anything to add on the 7th?
What I'll quickly add, and I might actually do I might do more on this at some point, like either, I don't know, something, because I think it's an important point to make. And I've been making it for a while in different formats since the possibility of striking the line down first became a real thing, which is that you can look at a lot of these primaries and, you can say, well, what does the county party support mean anymore? And that's true. Maybe it doesn't mean very much, right? All it confers is a slogan. And, maybe in a more well-organized county, it means some boots on the ground, some mailers going out, whatever. But you're right that it's not sort of an end-all be-all the way that it used to be. And you can look at fundraising and say, well, what does that, really matter when, well, first of all, when outside super PACs can come in and spend $4 million and just completely change the shape of a race. And when these candidates who are less well-funded, but sort of scrappier and more clever with their money can win anyways, like Ana Lilia Mejia did in the 11th district. She was like the 5th or 6th best funded candidate in that race. But she ended up winning just because, she used that money better and she sort of found a route that others didn't. And so you're going to hear a lot, I think, from campaigns that don't have party support and don't have very much money saying, well, what do any of those things matter anymore? We have a path that we can see. We can do this. We can sort of upset the table. And some of them may. But I think that the thing to really look at is what is any given candidate's lane? If their lane is, I have the party support everywhere, then that's a lane. If the lane is, I have $2 million and I'm just going to, or I have a super PAC that's going to spend $4 million and I'm just going to, blanket the field, that's a lane. If you don't have either of those lanes accessible to you, then you have to have something else, right? You have to have a message that nobody else in the district has. You have to appeal to, say, a community or a demographic group or an ideological lane that no one else does. You have to do something to make it clear why voters should not just sort of take the easy path and vote for the best funded candidate or the most establishment supported candidate. So in the specific context of the 7th district, I look at this situation where Rebecca Bennett has raised the most money of anyone in the field and has, the party endorsement in, I was doing the math, like 82% of the district's Democratic primary electorate lives in a county where she has the party endorsement, like it's vast majority. And, I don't know what Warren Democrats are going to do now that O'Rourke has dropped out, but maybe they'll go for Bennett and then it'll be even a higher percentage, although it was actually Brian Varela who came in second at the Warren convention. But so the 3 Democrats who remain in the race against her now have to pivot into, okay, so we are not going to win the party support race. And, we can raise a lot of money, but we're not necessarily going to drown Bennett out in the money race because she has a lot of money too. So what is our lane instead? And that's not impossible to find. I think that Brian Varela in particular has been sort of trying to run as the more true progressive in the race. That's a lane that one could find. Michael Roth has some sort of like local grassroots type kind of surges for him. That's a potential lane, et cetera, et cetera. I've talked about this longer than I really intended to when I launched this whole point. But the main thing that I would say is, as you look at both the 7th district campaign and any other New Jersey campaign this year or any future year, if a candidate is trying to sell you on, yes, these objective factors point against us or point towards someone else, but we can win because X, the X is really important. The evaluating whether it looks like they actually have a real route to win versus just saying that they have one because all of the natural signals don't point in their direction.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's, we didn't state the obvious up front, which is that this is one of the most closely watched House races in the country. It could help to determine control of the House. This is going to be a hugely competitive general election campaign against Tom Kean Jr., who is got no primary opponent. Has the Trump endorsement, has been able to stockpile a lot of money, and I think it's worth pointing out that first of all, so here we are on March 23rd. Vote by mail ballots go out in about 4 weeks. So people are going to be voting in the last week in April. So it's that it's here, and you've got a few Democratic candidates who we won't know their fundraising for another 23 days. Unless they give it up early, we won't know how much they've actually raised and what they have to spend in this primary campaign. But you're talking about a bunch of people that were unknown. I mean, nobody knew who Rebecca Bennett was a year ago, but nobody knew who Michael Sherrill was a year before she won a Democratic primary for Congress, and they didn't know who Kim or Malinowski or Gottheimer were. So there's this, fairly long history of people who decide to run for Congress, come in, they learn how to do it. They put together in all these cases, a good team, and they're still in this, and these are not household names, but I figured this out a couple of years ago. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but since when I did it, I used 1956 as the starting point. 80% of the incumbent members of Congress from both, combining both parties, that have been defeated for re-election lost to somebody who had never been a candidate for public office before. It's almost like being coming out of nowhere is more advantageous than coming into these races with a 20-year legislative record.
And I mean, you saw that in the 7th district primary this year, where there were 2 sitting or recent former elected officials who got in, and both of them, Greg Vartan and Sarah Sui, and both of them had real trouble gaining traction, and they got out months ago. 7th district Democrats had the opportunity to rally behind someone with like an obvious electoral track record in the district, and they seemingly weren't that interested. And so we've got this field of newcomers instead.
Yeah, and they're some of them are connecting, and some of them have really good people behind them that know how to win races. So this could be a good primary. But Joey, I hope I'm not like taking your thunder on something, because you've been wanting to do this. But are we? I mean, is it fair to say that today Rebecca Bennett is the front runner for the Democratic nomination for Congress in this district? I mean,
I've started to say that in my stories because I think it's true.
Yeah.
I think that until we have evidence to the contrary, you have to treat the candidate who has the most money and the most, technically she might not have the most money, that has raised the most money and has the most party support as the front runner. That feels like relatively sort of basic political balancing.
Yeah. Micah, Zach, what do you think? Bennett's the front runner?
I can't say I disagree. One of the other things that at least some of these conventions prove to be is just a test of validity. And in places like Hunterdon County, where it's just a lot of pretty engaged, but not super connected, really interconnected Democrats showing up to a convention and just voting for someone who is their favorite. Strength at places like that can signal electoral strength. We saw it with Mayor Baraka in Hunterdon last year, who came with a surprise second place finish and then ended up doing better than a lot of people expected in the governor's primary as a whole, and being able to win like Rebecca Bennett did in Hunterdon, or even Brian Varela took it to a runoff. It shows a validity, and so it's hard to look at those successes, both her success with some of the more connected conventions, some of the more, people would say, machine-based conventions, and some of the broader conventions like Hunterdon, and not be, convinced that she could be the front runner.
If you take the most recent example that we have of the 11th district special election, the primary, and play a little mental game, play along with me for a second. You take out all but one of the organization candidates. You leave one organization candidate with the field clear to him or herself. I think we can all agree that could have very well produced a different outcome, right? Why do I say that? Because Bennett does seem to have the organizational lane more or less to herself, with the exception of Varela having the slogan in Sussex. So she does have what Brendan Gill wishes he would have had in the 11th district, for example. And so I think by virtue of that, and the fact that there are maybe 3, I don't want to call them renegade candidates, but sort of anti-organizational candidates, or not organizational candidates, who may be splitting a lane, I think it does give her an enormous advantage heading into the primary.
And then I don't know if we're ready to switch over to this race yet, but then you look at the 12th district and you think, oh, wow, that's looking a lot like the 11th district.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very balkanized race where all four counties parties have one candidate who is sort of like of the machine there. They all overwhelmingly endorsed that candidate at their respective county conventions. There is no overlap, right? This is Brad Cohen in Middlesex, Verlena Reynolds-Jackson in Mercer, Chanel Robinson in Somerset, and Adrian Mapp in Union. Mm-hmm. And I would not call any of those candidates the front runner. No. I think that, I mean, as it stands right now, I would think that Sue Altman and Adam Hamawee are perhaps better positioned than any of the four organization candidates to ultimately run away with this thing, in part because the organizations are so split. I mean, when the seat was, this is Bonnie Watson-Coleman's seat that she's retiring from, when it was open in 2014 and she won it, you had a very similar thing where it was, instead of a four-way sort of organizational wars, three-way, where there was the Middlesex candidate, Linda Greenstein, there was the Somerset candidate, Upendra Chavukula, and there was the Mercer candidate, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, who also had union support. But because, I mean, there was technically one fourth candidate, Andrew Zwicker, now state senator, but that was essentially allowed to just be organizations punching each other as hard as they could. And ultimately the math just worked out. I mean, Watson-Coleman ran the best race and the math worked out in her favor such that she had the majority. But these candidates cannot rely on that anymore. And other candidates like Altman, like Hamawee, like Jay Weingenker, like a few other, I mean, there's lots of others that filed. I don't know how serious some of them are going to be, but they know that, right? They smell blood in the water here. This is a progressive and well-educated district that will be able to follow the twists and turns of this race pretty closely. And even if, let's say, it was Altman versus Hamawee versus one unified pick of all the county parties, that would still be competitive, in my opinion. The fact that it's Altman versus Hamawee versus, a bunch of others versus four individual distinct county endorsed candidates, I think that the county parties might be in for a little bit of a bruising here, which that could change in the next 2.5 months. I mean, Brad Cohen already raised a fair bit of money. The other candidates were pretty far behind in fundraising, but that could change. The looming specter of super PACs, whether it's APAC or artificial intelligence PACs or crypto PACs or anti-APAC, like pro-Palestine PACs, which have started to also be a thing, or who knows what else? Who knows what millionaires and billionaires are willing to spend a bunch of money into weird shadowy groups on in this. So that could obviously change a lot of the contours of this. But right now, we saw a warning sign in the 11th district of what happens when the county parties are all sort of can't get their act together behind someone. And I think we might be seeing it again here.
There were a lot of concerns with the new signature threshold that it could be an obstacle. But here in this case, we've got 13 candidates who filed. All 13 of these Democrats have more than 600 signatures. Like it shows that if you run a serious campaign, you can make the ballot. And in this case, this is going to be a pretty long ballot in the 12th Democratic primary.
I mean, that was always the thing with the signature requirements is if you are a serious enough campaign to potentially win a competitive primary, then you were a serious enough campaign to collect 500 signatures. Mm-hmm. And the vice versa, if you are not able to collect 500 signatures, you're probably not serious enough to win a real race like this. And that was always, that sort of that ties into a lot of broader arguments over what the abolishment of the line means, which is the line going away does not mean that a candidate who would have lost in an 85-15 blowout with the line in effect does not mean that 15% will suddenly become 51%. It means that a candidate who is discouraged from running in the first place because they just didn't really want to deal with the hassle of going against the line will run and get that 51%. So yeah, I mean, the signature requirements, that's something that people who are already struggling to sort of compete in the normal world of New Jersey politics were complaining about, and they will continue to do so. But the types of people who are actually capable of competing, regardless of whether they're doing so with party support or without it, are going to find that to be not a huge problem.
Joey, who did we lose in the 12th district today?
So there was a new update at 9:48 p.m. David, do you know if that's the final one, or are we still waiting on more?
I think that's going to be my understanding is that's going to be the last one coming in tonight.
But there could, so I'll tell you who is missing from the list as of right now. I can't speak to whether they will be missing forever, but Mike Anderson is not there. Isaiah Thompson is not there. Both of them were relatively little known Plainfield, like sort of community activist types. So, I mean, I guess that is in theory good news. If they don't make the ballot, that's good news for Adrian Mapp, because then he would get to be the only Plainfield candidate instead of one of three. Raymond Heck looks like has suspended. He
dropped out.
Yeah, the mayor of Millstone, not the kind of big millstone right next to Micah, but the extremely small millstone in Somerset County. I've been trying to keep all of these 12th district names in my head for months, and I'm not sure. So right now, you said that there's 12 who have filed right now?
I've got 13.
13, and that's plus 3 is 16. So there's one, because I think there were 17. Let me mute myself and figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing here too is Sue Altman. She didn't win any conventions, but she finished second just about everywhere.
And that's what we saw with Mayor Baraka last year, was finishing second everywhere, even though it didn't deliver him a win in the end. It proved his campaign to be serious.
Yeah. I don't think anybody...
The final missing Democrat so far, anyways, is Rick Morales, who... I wrote about Adam Hamaway, who is a U.S. Army veteran and surgeon. And then a week later, I wrote about Rick Morales, who is a U.S. Army veteran and surgeon. Like, oh boy, we got two, but it looks like we may in fact have one.
Hamaway blows the field away. He files with, not that it matters, right? Qualification is a qualification, but he has almost double what anybody else submitted in the way of signatures with 2,200.
I mean, he's got something real behind his campaign. I mean, he has the greatest chance of like in terms of going from essentially zero. He wasn't really zero in terms of name rec. He was Bonnie Watson-Coleman's State of the Union guest a couple of years ago. He has connections to Tammy Duckworth, senator from Illinois, because he saved her life 2 decades ago. So, he certainly is not a nobody, but in terms of going from not really a political factor to potentially next congressman, he's got sort of a path unlike anyone else there. And I think that the signature count really proves that he's got something real behind him. One quick thing, if Morales does in fact not file, and if he's in fact missing from the ballot list, that would mean that this district is around 1/5 Hispanic. And I believe that would mean that there are no Hispanic candidates running for it. So that would sort of open up a potentially significant voter block to it's sort of like how in the governor's race last year, there were no Hispanic Democratic candidates. And so, they split a little bit, but most Hispanic voters ended up going for Ras Baraka, and that ended up being a key part of his coalition. So if any of these candidates can sort of make meaningful inroads in the Hispanic community, since they don't have a candidate of their own per se, that could be really meaningful here.
Perhaps Samuel Wong with the Spanish in the slogan.
Right. But only in one of the 4 counties, right?
Only
not every
county. Only in Plainfield.
Right.
So he went with the Spanish slogan in Plainfield. And I don't know. I've sort of imagined what a debate might be like in the 12th district. I don't.
And then you cry yourself to sleep.
Yeah. Well, no. But what I'm thinking is hey Sam, what if how would you gerrymander this district, and how would you gerrymander that district? And, I mean. But
I digress. You already did draw the lines.
Yeah. I mean, and by the way, that I hear that from a lot of people, and more Democrats than Republicans, that there's just, there may be something, and this is an insider issue. This will never reach the mass electorate, but there's something a little bit off from, I am working for the independent tiebreaker, drawing the lines, and I've drawn the lines for myself. I mean, who does that? That's, there's a lot there. I agree with Joey. You don't see it in the convention vote. I think you'll see it in some fundraising. I mean, this is a district where we're going to look, certainly no later than April 15th, and see how much, what the resources are available to each of these candidates in order to get the message out. I'm not saying this to dare the candidates, at least not completely. But I frequently see the candidates who have something to brag about will tell us their fundraising numbers in early April.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones who want to avoid the questions are the ones that won't tell you until they file right at the deadline.
Except Tom Keane Jr., who mysteriously raises gobs of money every quarter and will not say so until the very last day he can.
While we're talking about the 12th, the primary composition, the composition by the last several primaries, the breakdown by the counties, the old way of looking at things, really did flip after the last redistricting. Mercer used to be the lion's share of this district. Now Middlesex is, in terms of primary turnout anyway. It's about 41% of recent turnout in House races. Mercer's next with about 30, Somerset's in the 20s, and Union is small, like 12% or something like that.
Yeah.
So very small. So if one of the questions I'm really waiting to see is how much the Middlesex County Democrats want this, that vaunted organization that doesn't have a member of Congress, doesn't have a member of the delegation. If they really want to get behind Brad and they want to crank out the votes in that part of the district, are they going to do that?
Yeah, I think I think that's right, and I think first of all, there's a couple. One little point I want to make, and I don't want to forget it, is when we look at these names that we've never seen before, and we wonder what are they doing in this race, and then we hit primary day and they're in the single digits, and we go, what were they doing in this race? And it's just important to remind everyone that as Joey said, the fourth candidate in this race in 2014, when Bonnie Watson Coleman won, was Andrew Zwicker. Nobody had ever heard of him. He didn't have any organization support. He didn't raise a whole lot of money, and he didn't do entirely well, except that he impressed a lot of people.
Right.
And that was enough for people to look to Zwicker to run for the assembly in 2015 in a district represented by two incumbents, one of whom was Jack Ciattarelli, and Zwicker narrowly beat a Republican assemblywoman. So some, I don't want to, I don't ever want to belittle a person that I'm not familiar with that's in this race, because they could be sitting in the state Senate in a decade. And by the way, I think had Zwicker won this entire landscape, had Zwicker run for Congress this year, I think we'd be looking at an entirely different landscape. Mike, I don't know if you have your list in front of you, but I think, again, I think some of these slogans are, again, interesting. Verlina Reynolds Jackson, where she doesn't have the organization slogan, went with "Powered by the People Defending Democracy." Squire Servance, I thought this is, I don't know what to think of this move. I mean, it's a cool name. You have to admit, that would be, I
think his ballot slogan should just be "My name is Squire Servance." That's cool.
Yeah. But he went with, Mercer County Democrats for Change, Middlesex for Change, so, and he carried that forward. Wang did A Scientist to Save Our Democracy. Altman is Progressive Champion for Working Families.
Mm-hmm.
Singh is Your Voice, Ideas, Concerns Matter. And Adrian Mapp is Your Voice, Our Voice, except for where he has the line. And also, again, before I forget, Mapp is, is a three-term mayor of Plainfield, but he has not won Democratic mayoral primaries in Plainfield by overwhelming margins.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's ever been out of the 50s. So there are votes to be had in Plainfield for somebody. Because there are voters that are conditioned to not vote for Mayor Mapp. So
when is the slogan? When is the deadline again for it actually
3 days
locking in 3 days? So there's still time too for candidates to look at this list and say, I see an opening here, and change their slogan before it's over.
Absolutely, and that's where the New Jersey Globe Filing Day Nerdfest has considerable clout, is that we're giving some people some free advice. I I thought the Hamaway slogan
Yes,
is fairly
it's
strong. Doctor, veteran,
yeah.
healthcare, not bombs.
I agree with you, David, and it's the same discussion we had with seven. In this case, particularly, even more than in seven, where you've got a dozen variants of change or
Mhm.
fighting MAGA or defending democracy, right? A lot of that very noble stuff can turn into word salad when you're trying to sort through a
Yeah,
dozen of these. But a bio may break through. A
yeah,
bio could be the one that's different enough, a
A
compelling
bio
bio.
that gestures at what he's trying to make his signature
Yep,
issue as well.
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
And a
And
bio that could, nullify some concerns about, his ideology. It's hard to say, hard to peg a veteran oftentimes as radical, which
Hmm.
people might try to do.
yeah. And I look at so Chanel Robinson hasn't done her slogans outside of Somerset, so we'll see. And then
We've
there's
got that.
some.
We received that. It's veteran, trailblazer, leader.
Okay, I didn't see that. Okay. And then then I look at the ones that I got. It seems like I've seen a variation of a million times. Matt
Right.
Adams, integrity, accountability, and leadership.
Hmm.
It just seems
Yeah. What are people
familiar and
supposed to take away from
ordinary,
that?
and
Right.
it's not going to make somebody really think. And Kyle Little. I don't want to mock Kyle Little. He could be a state senator in a decade. But fighter against fascism. Versus Jay Vankar is new generation fighting MAGA and extremism. It almost seems like if you put the two in a contest, that's sort of where that's going to be. And then the other thing is, so you have Greg Mealy, the Republican candidate. This guy has been shopping for a race for a long time. I think he was the libertarian candidate for governor a couple of cycles ago.
I think this will be technically his first time as the Republican nominee for something.
Yeah,
right? It's just the Republican nominee for a seat that he will never, ever win.
I think so. And there was another Republican that showed up at a couple of conventions, David Brown.
Right.
He didn't file. So it looks like Greg Mealy is there, and I think I spoke to him recently. He had some missteps when he tried to run. God, I don't remember. Joe, do you remember? Was it?
He's run for the 6th district before.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the 7th. It was the 6th 2 years ago. And he had some guy. Some guy with some bad history trying to give him some advice, and he acknowledged that he doesn't go anywhere near that person anymore. So he is this is what he's wanted. He wants to be a major party nominee, and he gets to run for an open seat. And
By the way, the word fighting appears in 3 different districts. So, this is clearly somebody got the memo that that's what voters are looking for this year is a fighter.
Yeah.
So does it become generic? Does it help you break out?
Yeah.
One thing I just for 1 second want to go back to 7 for just a second. And Varela, who I think we all agree that no kings is a pretty novel way to sort of put out your progressive bona fides. No kings, it runs into the issue. I don't think this will become an issue, although I'm sure Bennett's campaign will look at it. No kings has trademark applications. Nobody's been granted, but they're pending. And we know that the new law on slogans says that you can't use somebody else's trademark. So it will be interesting to see if that could go anywhere, would go anywhere, but it does potentially step on that line that that the law speaks to.
Yeah.
You could see something similar-ish in the 6th with John Sue, who challenging Frank Pallone, Democratic primary, but says Democrats against war, genocide, and ICE. Just naming ICE specifically in a slogan. That's kind of I don't know if that's untested, but it could be a challenge.
Yeah.
One quick update that I have on Rick Morales is that when you go on his website, it's got his little widgets for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and all three will take you to a thing that says this page no longer exists. So I'm thinking that this campaign might also no longer exist.
Yeah. Well, I think not filing a petition was, enough to go on. But I'm glad we have a second source on this. So,
David, are we treating this list as final?
Yeah. So what I'm told from the Division of Elections is all the names are up.
Okay.
They may go through a couple of these more signatures, but there's no new names that aren't on here.
Okay.
And they're pretty thorough. And by the way, I should just say this in case just to prevent anybody from thinking anything else. The New Jersey Division of Elections, these people are as apolitical as I have ever seen. They're there to just do a job of running elections, and I really hope I don't see things on social media saying well they threw away 1,000 signatures for this candidate or something. It's not true. The signatures are in the possession of the candidate or the representative the entire time. They are there at the counter or at a table with a representative. It's not like they're dropping the petitions off and somebody's looking through them without the campaigns. This is it goes way back, generation after generation. This is an office that's just got a tremendous reputation for integrity. So I really hope that nobody views it any other way. Are we done with the 12th? I mean, we have concluded there's no front runner, and this is going to be this is a great primary. This is the 7th. We don't know who's going to win, but the 12th is the best primary in the state. At least I think so. We'll see if the other three of you agree with that.
I agree. I mean, it's got the most upside for chaos.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's go to 11. Again, Joe Hathaway unopposed. And for the Republican nomination, and Mejia, I guess we talked about three candidates. Justin Strickland, who is a sitting councilman in Chatham. I don't remember Chatham Borough, Chatham Township, drawing a blank.
If it's a councilman, then I think you can guess.
As a councilman, it's Chatham, Chatham Borough. And then, but is he a councilman? Or I don't think he's a township committee, but whatever. He got single digits. He ran for freeholder the year before. Didn't do well. And this is,
So, I mean, I see the three non-Mejia candidates, Crescitello, Strickland, and then a more obscure guy named Joseph Lewis, as sort of a barometer for how well has Ana Lilia Mejia, in fact, consolidated support here. She's definitely consolidated support at the top level, and that, all the county parties and all of the members of Congress, or almost all of the state's members of Congress, have endorsed her. She didn't have any of that kind of support during the special primary, and she won anyways. Now she does have it. So, if she comes out of June, she's going to win in June. I don't think that this opposition is, I think even if she had gotten one of her stronger potential opponents like Tahisha Way or Rosie Bagoli, she still would have been favored. And with, less prominent opposition, I think that she's probably going to win it in a walk. But I do think that the size of that walk is probably going to be important because a lot of Democrats are still kind of grumbling about her winning and are like, can we take her down in 2028? Can we do something about this? We don't like her there. I'm not attributing those statements to anybody in particular, although it's clear that certain groups like AIPAC and stuff are not big fans of her. If she comes out of the June primary with 81% of the vote in a four-way field, then she's looking pretty great. If she comes out of it with 61% in a four-way field, then that's a little more dubious. So I think she still has a pretty strong incentive here to run pretty hard and treat this like it's a very real primary, even if we kind of understand that it's not really, and she's almost certainly going to win.
The good thing for her is that she is running a full campaign right now as a general. So it's
all of these voters are, all of these Democrats, the type of person who's going to show up for a Democratic primary in June is also the type of person who's going to show up for the special general election to vote for Mejia in April. Right. And so they're going to have a lot of muscle memory of supporting Ana Lilia Mejia over the next couple of months.
Yeah, and if you think about, which is where the calendar falls, her special election is April 16th, and a week later, voters are going to get vote by mail ballots for the June primary.
It never ends.
Yeah. So
not for her, not this year. 4 elections in a year.
Yeah. So she's going to go. She has a week between the last day people vote in the special and the first day people vote in the primary. And then there'll be a little bit of a breather going to the fall. But we're looking at 2 Mejia versus Hathaway races, and look, I mean, she gets a lot of credit for somebody that initially the front runners were Tom Malinowski and Brendan Gill, and now she has pretty much cleared the field in a Democratic primary, in a district that we'll see may or may not be in total sync with her ideology. She's been doing what she needs to do, I'm told, by going to see the establishment. She is the establishment candidate. I mean, let's I'll break it down to the talking point. Joey, you're still on mute, but I'll break it down to the talking point here, which is that Bernie Sanders' national political director in 2020 is the establishment candidate for a Democratic favored district for Congress. And I don't think any of us had that on our bingo card.
I mean, the establishment is very good at swallowing up the insurgents of New Jersey politics, and it's sort of up to the insurgents of how much they want to stick true to their roots or not. Like, I think Andy Kim, the moment that Tammy Murphy dropped out, became the de facto establishment candidate for Senate in 2024. And in some ways he's, proceeded to act like that. In other ways he hasn't, right? Like, sort of the typical party establishment is not calling for primary challengers to Jim Beach. So I think it'll be sort of Mejia. There's not like one coherent fork in the road that she'll have to decide, but there will be lots of individual choices that she'll have to make over both ideologically, how far to the left am I willing to make my voting record? How much do I feel the need to tamp it down in a district that's pretty blue, but not overwhelmingly blue? And in sort of the more internal politics type stuff, how many waves do I really feel like making? How many times do I really feel like crossing these party leaders who I'm sort of tentatively aligned with? How many wars am I going to start? And I mean, we haven't gotten into the county stuff yet, but we're sort of seeing that kind of realpolitik play out in real time in Hudson County, where we thought that there was going to be a big progressive versus machine war. And instead they decided that's not really worth it for either of us. So let's just come to a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said the machine absorbing the candidate. I mean, I was going to say, like, that's the history of Bob Menendez, right? Bob Menendez started as a reformer and was absorbed into the machine. And so it is the time-honored path. I think the organizations, we can't even really necessarily call them machines, but the organizations, it's sort of a stand down right now with Mejia, and it's a wait and see what she wants to do, what kind of record she wants to have. Does she want it to be out of step with the district, or does she want to be more in sync with the district? You're right, 2 years is not a long time away, and there are candidates who certainly can come out of the woodwork or really just lying below the surface. Criticized her this weekend for her stance on the debates. So that can materialize. It didn't materialize for this year. There's sort of a benefit of the doubt. You got it, you earned it, you won. But let's see what happens, because somebody else can run against you soon.
Yeah.
But one thing that does, I think, give her a little bit more, I think about a couple of the sort of progressive insurgents who won congressional seats, like Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, who then fell to more moderate primary challengers a couple of cycles later, versus the ones who have found, longer term success from that same kind of crop, like Rashida Tlaib or Ayanna Pressley, who have or AOC, who have really, really locked down their districts. And I think one of the important ways that Mejia at minimum could, maybe not will, but could fall into sort of more of the established Pressley Tlaib type bucket is she was maybe not a known force to everyday voters in this district before this campaign, but she was a known force to New Jersey Democratic politicos for years. right?
Sure.
She was a union leader. She was a Working Families Party leader. She was an elected member of the Essex County Democratic Committee. Were they aligned with her on everything? No. Were they going to endorse her for Congress? Clearly not. They didn't. But she is not some like total newcomer who they just have to figure out whether they can get along with. They already know that they can kind of get along with her. Like they crossed that threshold a long time ago. And
it might also depend on if she pulls the fire alarm at the Capitol or not.
That's what you wait and see what her record looks like in Washington.
Or if she hires like her husband's security firm to something weird with Cory Bush too. I don't know. If I was going to make that joke, I needed to know more about the scandal itself. So I apologize.
Probably. But look, the other thing, and Joey, it was a good point to make, which is that when Anna Lilia Mejia was a labor leader and working families, she had a really good relationship with a lot of the the people that would be labeled establishment. And I watched it when I saw the Essex Convention for the special,
right?
And she was speaking, and it was very clear that she and Leroy Jones did not have a bad relationship. They knew each other by working together on things over the years. So, this is not this person who just shows up out of nowhere. So, Joey, that was an important point.
Well, that is a good point.
It's an effective path.
That was a close vote. That was a close vote in that convention.
Yeah.
She had a lot of support. Yeah.
And so Working Families Party, effective path, we're seeing it with Sue Altman to an extent.
Antoinette Miles has got to start
5 years. We'll see.
Laying the groundwork today.
Yeah, I mean, you could, you could have 1/6 of the New Jersey congressional delegation next year potentially coming from the New Jersey Working Families, and that's a lot of. It's a lot of progress too. So let's go to
more so than almost any other fact, maybe even more so than the death of the county line. If you told your average New Jersey Politico that exact statement 6 years ago, their heads would actually explode.
Yeah. I mean, it's Anna Lilia Mejia and Sue Altman are going to be in Congress. First of all, the second half of that, Sue Altman's going to be in Congress. Askew's head is exploding right now, and that's just look. You never know where people are going to wind up, and there are people that are left for dead one year, and then they're at the top of the game, and Jim Florio lost 2 primaries for governor, two elections for governor. One is a primary where he was sort of that rabble-rousing outsider challenging an incumbent in a primary. So this is a business where people are constantly reinventing themselves.
So you're saying that Donald Crescitello has a chance?
Yeah.
No, in retrospect, what we are saying now, we could never have predicted, of course, but in retrospect, it makes perfect sense, because what we have always said about the end of the line is that it creates the potential, the possibility that you could compete. What will it take to compete? Good organizational skills, this person who can capitalize on that opportunity, the person who can pull out their voters out of their lane, right? And who's going to do that? Who's going to be equipped to do that? People who have organized before, and they're the ones who are in a position to take advantage of this brave new world before anybody else is.
Look, it's gonna take a few years for Judge Karashi and Senator Kim to realize their dream. It takes a while for muscle memory to change. And we're this filing day does not show the floodgates having opened up for a lot of outsiders. We also have to take consideration it's very expensive to run for Congress in New Jersey with New York and Philadelphia television, and it's just such an expensive media market that plays into it too. But I look at 7 and 12 very differently. Under the old rules, pre-2024, I've got to think that if Rebecca Bennett under the old system had sort of run the table on the county lines, you might not see as many candidates having filed petitions. Just like Sue Altman just sort of, she cleared the field for herself in the 7th district 2 years ago. That may be one of the changes, which is just these conventions don't matter, the slogans don't matter as much as the line and the preferential ballot placement. The real estate was much more important than the slogan. And I think you might have seen some things differently. But let's go, unless any of you have anything to add about the 12th, let's go to the 8th. And one of the things that, the first thing I'm going to point out is that this is going to be a real footnote. Jashawn Lucas, who has been slated for, much of the last 2 months, I'm told, as the Republican candidate in the 8th district, didn't get enough signatures. And so the winner of this primary is going to be unopposed in the general election.
Unless they do a signature write-in.
Yeah, and that's hard in a district like this. Right. Just to remind everybody, to refresh your recollection, you can run as a write-in in a primary, but you have to get at least the same number of votes as you would have needed signatures. So the person who gets the most votes in a write-in Republican primary doesn't necessarily win unless that person gets 500. And in this district in Hudson County, where they've got one county commissioner candidate and nine seats, in the north and east wards in Newark and Elizabeth, it's going to be hard to get 500 Republicans to walk into the voting booth and write in Lucas or Jashawn Lucas. It's
a lot harder than getting people to sign your nominating petition.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's more expensive, and you got to run a campaign to tell people to do it. And it's, this was the shot, and this guy fell short, and he never actually announced. So, history, well, Joey, we have to remember, between all of us to put him into some story so that, people understand why there was no candidate in this race when they go, Google NJ8 2026 years from now.
When was the last time, do you guys remember? Because it hasn't happened while I've been at the Globe. The last time that a congressional race went fully uncontested by one of the parties in New Jersey.
No, it's happened in some districts. Yeah, it's been a long time, and
I remember in 2020, Frank Pallone's opponent had some Republican opponent had some signature issue and didn't make it onto the primary ballot, but he successfully did a write-in campaign. So
when the signature requirements were that much lower,
right? When they were only 200 instead of 500.
Right. Yeah. So this is going to be hard, and so you've got Rob Menendez, who had a tough primary 2 years ago. Has the same last name as somebody else who's been in New Jersey politics for a very long time. Lives in Pennsylvania now, but he's consolidated things, and he is. Musab Ali ought not be underestimated. Harvard Law School grad, former Jersey City Board of Ed member, did better than people thought he would in the Jersey City mayor's race last year. But we don't know yet how much money he's got. We won't know that until April 23rd at the latest. And Menendez is clearly the favorite here. And then can sort of coast until the winter of 28.
And that, for a House incumbent, is a recipe for putting money in the bank. It's a recipe for playing in other districts, right? When you get to that safe territory,
or it's a recipe for doing the job really intently.
Well, sure, of course, but I'm just historically, this is what they do when they have this capital, right? When they have this opportunity to sort of grow, they put themselves into leadership contention by playing in other districts and helping other members and other candidates. So it invites all sorts of possibilities for him.
Yeah, and that's true. But also true is that it will become as Democrats are looking to regain control of the House in the Trump midterm, it's a harder pitch for big donors to write max out to Rob Menendez
when he's unopposed. Yeah.
When he's unopposed, and they don't need him, they don't need him to. This is going to be a horrible thing to say. I'm going against my better judgment, but they don't need Rob Menendez to launder the money between a donor and passing it on to another candidate. They can give directly to those candidates. So it'd make it a little harder. I've never asked Josh Gottheimer this, but I wouldn't be surprised if he'd go to court to defend a candidate running against him to be on the ballot. It helps him raise more. So
Josh Gottheimer, who, by the way, has been sort of the bête noir of a certain progressive wing, both in New Jersey and nationally for a while, and yet does not face a primary challenger this year, has not faced a primary challenger since 2020.
Yeah.
Somehow, even as candidates as incumbents who progressives probably would admit they find much less objectionable, like Frank Pallone, like Rob Menendez, continually face these primary challengers. Josh Gottheimer he's got it locked down.
Yeah. So Ben Wishna at George Washington University, who New Jersey is going to learn a lot about over the next few years, has told me that, Joey, the answer to your question is Rob Andrews and Donald Payne Sr. in 2006.
Okay.
So it has been.
That is not a super ideal comparison for Republicans. That the last time that they left New Jersey congressional seats uncontested was the enormous blue wave year of 2006.
Yeah. So you'll another. I don't know. I don't remember. I was covering this in 2006. I don't remember if nobody filed or if Askew got him tossed off the ballot. But it led some credence to that. So thanks, Ben, for letting me know. I would not have gotten that on my own without going to look.
This is actually one advantage I've always seen in the stronger party system of New Jersey, is that it has been historically very good at making sure that voters in most districts, even really safe ones, get actual choices. Like, it's more noticeable in the state legislative races than it is in congressional, because in congressional, most districts around the country have two-party competition. Is just high enough profile for that. So, and that's why it's so unusual that we're talking about this. It doesn't really matter whether there's a Republican in the 8th district. They're going to lose regardless, but that's part of why we're talking about it so notably. And also, I guess I should say, the 8th district swung further to the right than almost any district in the entire country between 2020 and 2024 in the presidential election. But I don't think that those gains have proven to be all that durable. But on the state legislative level, you'll look at other states and they'll be like 50 or 60% of races are just uncontested. That's not every state, but especially in the South and sometimes in the West, there's these crazy rates of uncontested races.
Yeah.
And the New Jersey system, where, the districts are pretty big, that helps, but also the fact that the parties are actively interested in recruiting candidates and want to make sure that they have, real slates and are really doing the work, even in places where they know they can't win. It is overall beneficial to democracy. That doesn't really happen without strong county party organizations.
And, these are, I've said this before, but these candidates from both parties who put their names on ballots in unwinnable races are really, I know this sounds nerdy, but they're heroes of democracy because they're stepping up and they're giving voters a choice, and that's always a good thing. And the other thing, and I see this less than what I remember from the 70s and the 80s is you used to put your name on a ballot and you get something for that.
I was just thinking the same thing,
like
David.
The number of 1970s and 80s and judges, Superior Court judges who had been a congressional candidate or a state Senate candidate, they have, partisan balance of the courts, and it's a, tremendous opportunity. You're a young attorney in Hudson County and you run as a Republican in the 8th district, and you run you just sort of go out there and you do the job you're expected to do and you impress some people, and then we've seen it where someday you get first of all, the senators and the governor are looking for a judge, and this name comes up. Rob Menendez's 22 opponent is now a town commissioner.
Oh, right. I was trying to think of an example of someone who had actually followed the path to success in recent years. And yeah, that's the perfect example.
Yeah, I mean,
they were looking for a Republican who might draw, the small percentage of the vote that was Republican. And they're like, what if we go for the guy who just ran for Congress?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, there are, there's a lot to be said in praise of people who do this. And, I see Carmen Bucco is
back for a third time against LaMonica McIver.
And he's run for some other offices, but here's a guy who he likes this. He believes that voters should have a choice. I've spoken to him a couple of times. He doesn't believe he's going to win these elections, but this is just something he's doing what he believes is right. By the way, and I'm not, I don't mean this as a free ad for Carmen Bucco, but people in Union County, he is a tailor and he makes custom suits. And I've had people in Union County from both parties tell me that, that he's really good at that. So maybe this brings people through the door. And, when you're selling a custom suit for, $3,000-$5,000 or something, and you bring in a few people because they recognize your name, maybe that's good for business. But
and the classic example, I know we haven't started talking about county races yet, but Curtis Bashaw, right, U.S. Senate candidate, is running for county commissioner in Cape May County this year. I mean, that's what we always say, that people should do. Start at the level where you can win. Enter. We need people. We need good people. He's actually doing that, which is interesting for a guy his age to be starting at the county level, right? He's not a young guy starting at that level, but did a good job and turned a lot of heads and ran a credible race. And so, Cape May County recruited him. The Republicans recruited him.
Yeah. Joey, talk about the 9th. Because this has been.
So I was going to kind of group the 9th and the 2nd here.
So why don't you do that? Go ahead.
Both are very, very interesting primaries for nominations that the jury is still a little bit out in terms of how important those nominations will really be. In the 9th district, this is the Nellie Poe district. She, it looks like, will not face a primary challenger. There was some chatter about that last year, but she seems to be getting off scot-free there. But yeah, Republicans, it's Rosie Pino, a Clifton councilwoman, versus Tiffany Burris, an attorney and the wife of a former NFL star. And this primary has gone in a lot of waves. I won't go through all of the different stages of how we got to this point, but the basic end result is Burris has party support in Passaic and Hudson, and also has the endorsement of Billy Prempe, who is the rather interesting nominee for the seat in 2020, 2022, and 2024. And Pino has sort of won in an upset at the Bergen County Convention, so she has party support there. So this is sort of and those two halves of the district are similar-ish in percent. The Bergen portion is a little bit bigger in the Republican primary. But this is sort of, this is a classic, this is a showdown, right? This is two candidates who are fairly credible, but neither of whom are so obviously credible as to be easy frontrunners. They have equal party support. We don't really know about fundraising yet because Burris, we haven't hit her first filing deadline for fundraising reports. I wouldn't be surprised if they've raised similar-ish amounts of money. So this is kind of all the makings of a barn burner. And then I think the same is true in the 2nd district, which is Jeff Van Drew's district. The Democratic primary there, 4 Democrats filed. I think 3 have a real shot at the nomination. Bailey Winder has been running the longest and has raised the most money so far. Zach Mullock is the mayor of Cape May City. He has, a fair number of supporters there. He also raised a lot of money in his sort of immediate campaign launch and maybe has some sort of deeper institutional support. And then Tim Alexander, who ran for the district in 2022 and 2024, has most of the county party endorsements and still has obviously a relatively devoted base from his prior campaigns and just from sort of generally being a guy around town in the district. So that's another race. But in both races, both the 9th Republican primary and the 2nd Democratic primary, neither of them had any big surprises on filing day. One minor second district Democrat looks like didn't file. But they have all of the makings of really competitive primaries. You could see if, someone sort of makes a break for it in the 12th district, you could see the 9th and the 2nd districts become objectively the most competitive primaries in the state. The question is, can Republicans beat Nellie Poe? Can Democrats beat Jeff Van Drew? And I think the answer right now in both should be treated with some skepticism. I think that Republicans had high hopes about Nellie Poe at first, but that district, even though it voted for Trump in 2024, seems like it snapped back pretty hard. And I don't think we've seen any evidence that it's sort of continuing on its 2024 path, at least this year. And Van Drew is just sort of a powerhouse in his seat, and it would take a lot of Democratic energy to unseat him. So long story short here, all the dynamics are here for primaries that are just as interesting as anywhere else in the state. But it might be just to lose by 10 points in the end.
Yeah, a lot depends on how big of a blue wave materializes, right? I mean, it's not going to be on the ground dynamics that we've seen so far that are going to make these districts competitive. It's going to make it's going to be a question whether or not, in Van Drew's case, whether or not there's a blue tsunami that's materializing against him and just getting everybody swept up in it.
And in Poe's case, if the blue wave turns into an absolute nothing burger and it turns out the Republicans have a fine year, then okay, maybe that seat comes back onto the board a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I mean, right now, what we're looking at, we're sort of like a big but not enormous Democratic election year. That's sort of the scenario where neither the 9th nor the 2nd district is wildly close.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bailey-Winder will be an interesting test case of which messages to work for Democrats, especially in primaries and general elections this year. He's really attached himself heavily to the anti-data setter, gotten some media attention both from us and elsewhere about that. So that's it's a good little incubator for that type of testing too.
And he's doing what I was talking about before, where Moloch and Alexander might be fighting over the county party endorsements primarily. Moloch and Winder, I think, are going to have relatively similar amounts of money in the end. So that kind of means that Winder has to find some alternate lane, some other specific reason that's not just, I'm a guy who's a great guy and you should vote for me, that people would support him over someone else who is similarly, I'm a great guy and I don't like Jeff Van Drew. And he has really latched onto the data center issue. And that's, you're right, it's an interesting test case. Can that work? Is that enough of a hot button issue to drive voter preference irrespective of any other factors in the race?
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, David. No,
I was fascinated over the weekend where I'm this is going to be, Zach, you don't know this yet, but this is going to be, something you're going to be working on, this story about, it was a really, really good NJ.com story about the data center in Vineland that is putting out a humming sound that is really causing a disturbance. And that's,
I hear it now.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think that might be the next big issue there.
It's particularly the kind of thing that can catch fire with in Vineland. A lot of Jeff Van Drew support.
Mike Rasmussen says data centers are the kinds of things that can catch fire in Vineland.
Exactly. The mayor is very vulnerable in this. The incumbents are very vulnerable in this because they have sort of championed the project. They brought it along, and of course that's where Jeff gets a lot of his support in Vineland is through the incumbents, through the party establishment. And so, if it is a liability for the incumbents in Vineland, then it could be a liability for him.
Yeah, and what you may see, and I have no basis to say this other than just a hunch. I wouldn't be surprised to see some real money spent by this industry in trying to stop this from latching on as a big issue before it does.
A 30-second spot that says you don't actually hear that.
Yeah.
So a 30-second spot that simply emits a frequency that perfectly counteracts the humming frequency, so you get 30 seconds of peace.
A muffler in a car, but just for the
This is this is the point where we should start speeding it up too. So.
I mean, there's not a ton of races left to talk about, honestly.
No, I mean, we
could keep on going through districts, but
I want to touch upon a couple of the county races.
Right, go ahead.
And so let's and there's not that many. I mean, there are, I thought that 2 years into the elimination of the line, that you would start to see more of these at the county level, and we're not, but Cumberland, which raises great political scientists, but what you're seeing here is a rematch. First of all, you're seeing a rematch of the Cumberland sheriff's race from 3 years ago that Bob Ostino lost to Michael Donato, and in the 3 years since he lost, he's gotten himself elected to the Board of Commissioners as a knocking off a Republican incumbent. But he's running for sheriff, and then you've got 8 candidates. This is a control election, which is why it's important. This went tilted heavily Democratic a few years ago, and Democrats have whittled this down, and it is now a 4-3 Republican majority.
Well, to be clear, it went heavily Democratic a few years ago. It went heavily Republican a couple of years ago,
and now it's back to being. Now it's sort of competitive again.
Yeah. Well, this is the point. There aren't many counties that can swing either way at this point. County elections.
So you've got a 4-3 Republican majority, and 3 of the 4 Republican commissioners are up this year. So this is either keep control or be obliterated, or a combination, because Cumberland knows how to switch it. But I'm seeing some familiar names there. Former freeholder, and I call him a former freeholder because he was never a county commissioner, but former freeholder Joe Pepitone, who, after he lost his freeholder seat, got elected to the Millville School Board. He's now running for county office again. If you had told me at age 10 that I'd be talking about Joe Pepitone, I would be thinking about pinstripes in the New York Yankees. But Joe Pepitone was a pretty good name, pretty good vote getter in Cumberland County. Ron Frascicini, former Vineland councilman,
right?
He's running for county commissioner. I think Darwin Cooper has run before, and LaRue Smith, and you've got a bunch of others. I'm sorry?
LaRue, I think.
LaRue, okay. She didn't win, so in my defense, I've moved on. But this is 8 candidates. This is a lot of competition, and
who has the Cumberland party support, whatever that might mean.
Yeah. I think the party support, again, you're right, for whatever that means, is Pepitone and Frascicini and Darwin Cooper, who's run before and lost. The others, but the point that I really want to make here in this post-line era is you don't have a lot of primaries in Bergen. We talk about the deal in Hudson. You don't have any in Middlesex or Monmouth or Ocean for the Republicans. Is that somebody can run in Cumberland County and afford, and a campaign's affordable, and you can you could raise a little bit of money and run a decent race in Cumberland. It's sort of like running for mayor of Hamilton, in terms of comparisons. Whereas if you're not the party candidate in Bergen County, Bergen County's got 300 something thousand Democrats, and you need a lot of money to be able to reach them. So Cumberland is worth watching in the primary to make sure that at least the people that I for rightfully or incorrectly, it's going to be one of those two, are the candidates that would be the better general election candidates there. If they survive the primary, this is this is the most competitive countywide race in the state. And I'm going to move through these quickly, but because it's Cumberland, Mike, I have to ask you to weigh in.
Yeah, this is also, we always have to remember when we say it, this is where Senator Testa is the county Republican chair. This was really ground zero of where he and Van Drew really turned the South Jersey tide that was looking so overwhelmingly Republican a couple of years ago. But as Joey just said, it's also ground zero where the Democrats have started to make back some of those gains, have started to win back some of those gains. And this is the county where Sean Spiller in the Democratic primary did very well in the primary last year in the governor's race. I think finished maybe number 2. Not a whole lot of teachers make an outsized portion of the Democratic primary electorate, the educated Democratic electorate in that county. And so he was able to break through there where he was not able to break through in a lot of other counties. So it is going to be interesting to watch whether Democrats can continue to make gains there and gain back, a lot of what they gained and lost under Testa and Van Drew.
Yeah. So I'm going to move through these unless somebody has something to say, because it's getting late. But I look at it, first of all, there's nothing to discuss other than my sort of fascination with the ages of the surrogate candidates in Bergen County. The Democrats nominated a 77-year-old former mayor of Oakland, and what did the Republicans do? They said, "Wow, people are going to view her as young and inexperienced." And they went with an 82-year-old guy who with a great resume, 20 years on the Superior Court. And then the last year at age 81, he ran for councilman in Franklin Lakes and beat a Republican in a primary. I mean, this is a Democratic county. There's no reason to think this is competitive. But this 82-year-old has a primary opponent, and that's the guy that they recruited to run when they were desperate to just get a name to go on the ballot. And then when they found something better, they sort of cast him loose, and he's still filed. There's really nothing to discuss other than when we're, one of the issues that we see nationally over the last few years is what do you do about people that stay too long in public office and people that become too old to perform their jobs. Mike and I remember, Elton Conda, the Burlington County surrogate who spent the last few years of his term in a nursing home. And they picked him up at the nursing home and they drove him to the office, and he would do a little bit of work. He would take a nap, do a little bit of work, have his lunch, and they would drive him back to the nursing home. And here we are with candidates that have a combined age of like 160. That's just sort of not part of the model of what some of these younger candidates are looking for.
Their combined age is approximately the same as this live streams, but with half the people.
Yeah. Okay. I'm doing the math, but you guys
too many numbers.
You guys have to remember that I've known Micah since he was in high school.
That's right.
And I was his adult advisor. And so, when you I just still think of Micah as very young. So it doesn't, he's in the group of the two of you. So, anyway,
only to you, David, only to you.
Yeah.
And I have to mention, when we talk about elected officials that age, right, there's always the exception of Vito Perillo, right, from Canton Falls, right? So
but exactly. And then you get the opposite, which is Jack DeGroot, who I think was 23 or 24 when he came out of nowhere and beat an incumbent in the Sussex County commissioner primary 3 years ago. Now he's 3 years older. He has his, I hear nothing but good reviews about him. And, he is a farmer and I think he does some small business stuff, and he is unopposed in that primary. And Essex County, this was a fascinating convention on Saturday. 3 of the 4 at-large commissioners are stepping down, and they nominated a new slate. Christine McGrath, the councilwoman from Verona, and Livingston Mayor Sean Keene. Sean Keane. My God, that is not what I meant to say. I'm sorry. Sean Klein. I'm still stuck in last week's story. I apologize. And the Democratic municipal chair, a firefighter from West Orange named Abdur Yassin, they won, and they did it by putting together sort of a coalition of the organization people plus pockets of progressive county committee members. These were the ones that won, and so most of the people, most of the 11 candidates have gone away, but Bob Russo, who is 78, who go back to the Inside Edge I did about him a couple of weeks ago. He was 31 in 1978, sitting on the stage waiting to get sworn in as a Essex County freeholder when Nick Caputo, the county clerk, leans over and says, "Bob, you got to move. The judge just declared the other guy the winner." And he had to get up out of his seat, boutonniere on his lapel, and new guy gets sworn in. He has been running for county commissioner for 48 years. And he filed his petitions anyway today. He called it a symbolic gesture to his supporters in Montclair, where he used to be mayor. But the bottom line is, you can't not be the party candidate with 300,000 Democrats in Essex County and just come out of nowhere without a lot of money and run a campaign. You're going to have a lot of turnover on this board of commissioners, but in the post-line era, there's no primaries in the district races, and everything has moved on. Salem County, which is the size of Old Bridge, the incumbent Ed Ramsey has a primary from somebody who's got a little bit of a base there. I'm told, named Lou Merrifield, that came in sort of last minute. The winner's going to run against Chuck Hassler, who used to be a freeholder years ago. This county was competitive, and then it became solid red, and I think it probably still is. Passaic County is a really interesting primary. Orlando Cruz, his running mate Bruce James is stepping down. There are 4 candidates, including Ali Aljara, who's involved with CARE Action New Jersey, seeking to mobilize a significant Arab American base of voters in Passaic County. I think that's going to be a good primary, and quite frankly, the other one to watch. The rest of them, you might have, you're going to have a really good general election in Atlantic, but there's no primary challenges. Gloucester, dysfunctional from time to time, no primary challenges. And so the other race, I'll end with Hudson, but the other race to watch is Mercer County Commissioner, because you had 2 incumbents, went to the convention, faced a challenge from Nakia White-Barr, Harvard law grad, former vice president of Princeton University. She did well enough at that convention to also be permitted to use the organization's slogan. Here's the thing that's sort of, and I think people across the state are going to like watching this race, because even though the convention said all 3 can use the slogan, the incumbents, Lucy Walter and John Semino, filed a joint petition. And under the law that was passed last year, they are permitted to bracket together on the ballot. So even though they have the same slogan, Walter and Semino will be bracketed, and Nakia White-Barr will be on her own. What I learned today, and I say learned today because I honestly had no idea how this was going to work. So what they do is they hold a ballot draw, and they're either going to choose either the Walter Semino slate is going to get position 1 or 2, or if Nakia White-Barr is selected first, she'll be in position 1, and then they'll be in 2 and 3. She's either going to be in 1 or in 3. She can't be in the middle ballot position. So, you talk about, a convention, here's nothing, guard it with your life. The it's a level of playing field on all the slogans, but you still got two that are bracketed together. So
Yeah, and
That's the
the
same
potential.
practice that some progressives had. There's some talk of a challenge against that practice last year, but it never materialized legally.
Yeah, I was going to say there's the potential that runs afoul of the Karashi decision, which says that
Which
everybody's gotta
says,
have,
yeah,
exactly, everybody's got an equal chance of getting any position on the ballot, and so
yeah,
potentially she could be the cause of a challenge there. We'll have to
yeah,
see.
she does not have an equal chance. She can either be,
Right.
because the others can be 1 and 2 or 2 and
Yeah.
3, but
Yep.
she can't be number 2 on the ballot. And
Exactly.
I just think that's interesting, and we'll be
Mhm.
looking at that a lot more. And let me end with Hudson, because I think we all thought that this was Civil War time. This was we were going to have after post James Solomon and sweeping control of the of the Jersey City Council. You had two candidates who are who say they are part of the Democratic. They consider themselves to be Democratic Socialists, and they are Jersey City councilmen. You saw the progressive candidates with Katie Brennan and Ravi Bala, beating the organization and beating Fulop's candidates for the state assembly. I thought this was the place where there was going to be a battle. 9 county commissioner districts. So nobody had to run countywide in Hudson. You just have to run in 1/9 of Hudson. It made it more manageable. But Hudson made a deal. And that's what you do when you're playing a hand of poker, and you're not entirely confident in your hand. You think you might win, you think you might lose. You put together something where you diminish your losses. So the old establishment, I shouldn't say old because but Craig Guy, county executive, county chairman, Brian Stack, Albio Ceres, Richie Turner, the whole establishment group, they are now in a coalition with James Solomon and Katie Brennan and Ravi Bala, and they have put together this unity slate. It's going to, it means that the Hoboken seat, Emily Jabor agreed to this. The Hoboken seat is going to go to a candidate who's done, this is his 3rd race for county commissioner, but another candidate who, Eureka Ponte-Lipsky, who I think won by about 130, 150 votes in the last primary. She's got a free ride now. And there's only 1 primary out of the 9 districts. And, in that one, there's 3 candidates. So, this to me is the surprise of filing weekend, is the deal that's been put together. So, Hudson, Hudson has a history of this. I mean, Albio Ceres was and I have said that, he and I, use the word, this is not done behind his back, although no way Albio Ceres is watching this at 11:15. But he was a gadfly who ran for office 4 times locally. He was a pain in the ass at council meetings. And eventually he won local office and became mayor and assembly speaker and congressman. Now he's back to being mayor again. Fulop ran against Menendez in a congressional primary. Sacco was on this. Brian Stack was from the outside fighting his way in for a lot of years. And then, this is how Hudson does it. You win an election, and all of a sudden they really do come together. And you've got, I didn't think a couple months ago that Solomon, Brennan, and Bala would be part of the same coalition as everybody else. So there's really not going to be much to see in Hudson County at all.
There's not going to be much to see electorally. I think there will be a lot to see politically in terms of how this cobbled together, on paper 9-0 Democratic majority, but in practice, much more tenuous band of squabbling factions is going to really play out.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is
Yeah,
where
I think in the past it's been sort of one and done. You're co-opted, you're in. But I think that the organization would be probably fooling itself if it thought that the Renegades have a disaffected year. They're not happy with a ticket, that they don't run their own, right? I mean, they're not going away. They're not folding in. They're going to have to be
every single Jersey City Council seat remains held by a Solomon ally right now.
Right.
Like, you know, there's no need to sort of just go along with the county party unless they feel like they can get substantial concessions out of it, like they did this year. I almost think that they could have gotten even more concessions out of it, just looking at a couple of the districts. But
yeah, but you've got, you know, you've got in the North Bergen district, you know, part of the piece here is Brian Stack, and you know has endorsed Robert Basilis, who is the Nick Sacco county commissioner. Larry Weinstein has supporting the Sacco county commissioner. They didn't want to, their fight comes next year in the race for mayor of North Bergen. You know, I don't think Sacco's running again, but you know, you never know. But they decided that they want to gear up for next year's fight and not have one this year. So, you know, it's taken Hudson off the table. We're going to look at Cumberland and Mercer and a couple of the others. But God, with all of the, you know, the pregame work that you know everybody's looked at, you know when it comes right down to it, you know, you're talking about two important House primaries. Two where you may be picking a candidate that, you know, is not going to come close in a general, and you've got a you're going to have really in the county level. I think you look at Cumberland and Atlantic, and then you stop looking for a little while. So
part of it is open seats. I think we've said this before. The political calculus anywhere, not just New Jersey, is that running against an incumbent is a whole different ballgame than running for an open seat. If you're running against an incumbent, I mean, you know, that's not to say that people don't do it. Musab Ali is, I think I would add that primary. You said sort of 2 real Democratic primaries. I think I would maybe say 3. I think I would say 7, 8, and 12. But it's just, you know, that's an entirely different calculation you have to make. And so if most incumbents are running for re-election, both on the congressional level and on the county level, then maybe you just don't have the same level of interest. Someone who's in Middlesex County, who is maybe aligned with the county party, maybe not, who might want to get involved in politics in that way, looks at this year, sees that all the incumbents are running for re-election, knows that would just be purely a fight against the party, where, you know, inevitably the incumbent would get party support for re-election, and they'd have to spend their entire time campaigning in a county of 800,000 people or whatever Middlesex is, just to try to beat an incumbent and probably lose. Versus, you know, these county seats are up every single year. It doesn't really matter to these people, and with a couple of exceptions, right? Hudson's a little different, Essex is a little different, but most of these counties have the same at-large county commissioner seats up every single year. If you're interested in running for office, just wait a year and see if an incumbent retires. I think that, you know, even with all the changes in New Jersey politics that we've seen, the baseline of, you know, random person who doesn't really want to go to war against the party machine, but does kind of want to get involved in elected office, is probably going to wait for an open seat for that to happen. That remains true. And I think that goes a long ways towards explaining why we've got a couple of real races and a lot of not so real races.
I agree. Well, we finished. This has never happened to us before. Slightly ahead of Joey's.
Finish is a strong word, given that I know that we'll all have like 6-minute postmortems to get through now.
So I've spoken enough. I'm good. Let's go through Joey. You know, we'll go to Joey, then Zach, and then Mike.
Hey, I just did a whole monologue. Someone else go.
Yeah. Zach, you're good?
I'm okay.
Yeah. This is it. This is filing night. So
it was session today too. It's been a long day.
Yeah. Micah, any closing?
No, I'm good.
Then we are good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Joey Fox and Zach Blackburn Micah Rasmussen. This is, this is just the start of spring New Jersey Politics Nerdfest. So we will all be back, I guess, the Thursday before the primary, and then the Thursday after the primary, so that we can bore you even more than we have to say. So.
and hopefully some debates between now and then too.
Yes, we hope so. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see everybody soon. For those who care, no Inside Edge tomorrow. Watch this. Okay. Good night.
Right.